pleasure to welcome you all at the 5th edition of Indian Chemical and Petrochemical Conference. I am especially delighted that we have the Government of Chemical and Petrochemical partnering with us for this initiative. Secretary Sir, please accept our sincere gratitude for sparing your valuable time from your very busy schedule to be here with us today. This year's conference has been built around the theme Building a Competitive Framework for India 2047. Today we have an excellent panel of top business and industry leaders, experts, academia, senior government officials to share their important insights on achieving milestones for building competitiveness, sustainable manufacturing, boost export, strengthen leadership in R&D, innovation, digitalization, and chemical regulations. These are exciting times with India moving up the global rank as an economic power and a business magnet for investment. Given its high significance and scale of value addition, this industry has the capability and potential to address several of the nation's development priorities and thereby take the country to higher spectrum of growth and development by 2047. The chemical and petrochemical industry has the latent ability to hasten India's objective to emerge as a global hub for manufacturing, technology, innovation, while meeting the goals for sustainable development. Department of Chemical and Petrochemical has undertaken several key initiatives for the growth of the sector. Recently, the industry facilitation cell was set up with the aim to maintain transparent interaction with industry and early resolution of the issues faced by industry. Sir, this initiative has received immense response from the industry. While a lot has been done, there are few areas which need your attention, sir. In the interest of time, I will not get into too much of detail, but give you a brief sense of the challenges related to each of these issues. CII has identified a 7-point agenda where government and industry can work together to create a conducive ecosystem to achieve the goals for India 2047. The second one, a revised PCPI policy addressing the issues that have been hindering the desired growth of PCPIR in earlier policy. The third one is enhanced digitalization for seamless ease of doing business to ensure that compliance and regulatory approvals are transparent and real time. The fourth one is the bulk transportation of chemicals and petrochemical using isotankers, which is being followed globally in the developed world, following UN model regulation for dangerous food transportation. This is not only beneficial for safety, but also has ecological and logistic advantages, air, road and sea, including interchange between these modes of transportation. Fifth one is to expand the scope of PLI scheme to cover some of the commodity chemicals in the value chain, where the domestic production is inadequate. The sixth one is a ladder of duty structure for creating opportunity for value addition and adequate competitive protection. The seventh and the last one is to encourage Indian universities and institutes to collaborate with their global counterparts by liaising at the government level for working on projects based on industry issues, environmental issues of global importance. Sir, this initiative will be a game changer for the future of this industry. So CII would like to organize close to roundtables in collaboration with ICPC on key milestones and segments, taking inputs from today's conference. Further, we prepare a comprehensive report with a strategic action plan and achievable timeline. Today we are very fortunate to have with us today
CEO and MD Union Limited Private Limited Address.
Good morning. Honorable Secretary, Department of
Chemical and Petrochemicals, Sri Arun Baroka-ji, other dignitaries on the dais, and my friends and captains of the industry. It's my immense pleasure to be here today at the 5th edition of Indian Chemical and Petrochemical Conference. Sri Arun Baroka-ji, our sincere gratitude to you and the Department of Chemical and Petrochemical for your continuous support and guidance to the industry. Now directly coming on the topic which we are currently discussing, building competitive framework for India at 2047. We all have been talking about the continuous growing global chemical market. India's target towards a $5 trillion economy and chemical sector contribution to it. India with its high domestic consumption is emerging as one of the focus destinations, all thanks to government Make in India program, which is focusing and conducing all the policies to facilitate investment. We are one of the most preferred destinations for manufacturing in the world today, but only holds 3% of the global chemical sales. Now this reflects the kind of opportunity we are talking for India and the potential India has to grow as a global chemical hub for manufacturing. Looking at macro perspective, we as a country are at the very significant juncture. India will assume G20 presidency next month onward. This year with a focus on equitable growth and shared future for all. Specific focus areas during the G20 tenure, as you all know, is the global value chain for resilient global trade and investment, skilling inclusive energy growth, resource efficiency, digital transformation, technology, innovation and R&D. I am confident that all these focus areas shall also make an overreaching vision for building a competitive chemical and petrochemical industry by 2047. We as an industry are at a very crossroad where we have an opportunity to serve our domestic industry demand, which is increasing due to the changing lifestyle. On the other word, is looking at Asia and particularly in India, because the world is looking at India and Asia, specifically India, because we are at the helm of an economic turnaround with the great resilience. With such a responsible industry, there is no doubt on growth of Indian chemical industry. The government of India is continuously working on providing a conducive environment to increase the share of the chemical sector to the GDP in the manufacturing sector by 2025. I must appreciate that ICPC is engaging stakeholders, consultations with industry on preparing the policy roadmap for the chemical sector, and those roadmaps are with 5 key elements. Number 1, encouraging Atmanirbhar Bharat initiatives. 2, reopening the PLI scheme, which we are all waiting. RODTEP for chemical sector, re-evaluation of PCPRs and appropriate tariff, non-tariff measures for chemicals for which adequate domestic capacity exists. The theme today, the building a competitive framework for India 2047, is absolutely on the track. From novel process technologies to sustainable practices, the chemical industry is in the midst of profound change. The changes will happen gradually. However, decisions being taken today will be pivotal for potentially setting the stage for the entire transformation. Let me now highlight some of the key thrust areas which in my view will play a pivotal role in placing out our sector to become key contributor to Indian GDP and to the global competitive edge. The first and foremost, as we have already discussed in many forums, that the industry still needs a lot of support on feedstock, and government is working on PLI scheme, which is focusing on value-added products, as requested by my colleague speaker earlier. We would be looking forward even for the support of making building block in India, because that will give a boost to the industry segment in a big way. The number two, integrating innovation and sustainability. So we are all working towards bringing new molecules. We are looking at bringing new platforms, but I think we need to start looking at new product development along with sustainability. And I'm sure you all know what I'm trying to say. So this involves a lot of work on R&D, this involves a lot of work on our environment protection, sustainability, etc. Number three, transformation to net zero target. Now, many countries and many industry segments have started talking net zero. For us as chemical and petrochemical industry, this is really challenging task, but we will never be left out with this. So as a leading industry segment, we all have to start looking at the targets of net zero and start making our efforts. I know that there are areas which are currently not addressed, like how do we address our steam requirement being net zero. But I think the technologies the country is working on with hydrogen, ammonia, we are looking forward that we will get the solution soon. So nevertheless, excluding that, if we can start working in other areas like logistics, environment, for net zero targets, I think it will be good for us to place our industry into a competitive segment in the global industry segment. Fourth, safety and responsible care. I think we all agree that in the recent past of last 4 to 6 months, the incidences which we have seen in the sector is not appreciable. I have personally attended some of the global level conferences. The senior leaders have started talking concern, particularly on the chemical industry and petrochemical industry in India. We have to look at safety and responsible care very, very seriously. There are a lot of pockets of innovations are happening on safety. We all have to look at being this as our top agenda along with the growth to make the sector visible as a growing sector. Because we might grow, but if we are lacking on this area, probably global customers or global partners may not accept us as a sustainable partner. The last but not the least, in our competitiveness on our products and processes. Doing through manual process, there is a limitation to make our cost competitiveness. We have personally experienced in Jubilant that if we use digitalization to make our processes robust, I think we reach the global standards. So we all have to really look at how do we make digitalization. As I said, as a company, Jubilant India has well-charted plan filtered on sustainability mess to help customers meet their sustainability commitments. As the world is moving towards sustainable growth and a more circular economy, we are committed to develop products that will enable our customers to reduce their carbon footprints. With our immense potential and opportunity, I would emphasize that with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision and industry's commitment, India is set to become chemical hub to the world by 2047, actively championing sustainable solution to the chemical value chain. Thank you.
Hearing it very open-mindedly, and then we'll try and incorporate certain things of it in their business cycle. Now we have the pleasure of inviting Mrs. Vartika Shukla, Chairperson and Managing Director, Engineers India Limited, to kind.
Thank you, Uncle. Secretary, Department of Chemical and Petrochemicals, CII. Mr. Namidesh Chaudhary, Vice Chairman and Managing Director at Lancet India, Mr. Rajesh Srivastava, CEO and Managing Director, Jubilant India Limited, Mr. Vishwanathan Rajendran, Partner, Etikani, and ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you. It's my pleasure to be part of this conference and speak on certain issues which are relevant to take note as we move forward to build a competitive environment and to build a competitive framework to to take the growth of the petrochemical and chemical industry forward. Needless to say, the petrochemical industry is one of the crucial elements to achieve country's economic growth and reach a $5 trillion economy. Although we are hugely energy dependent, the significant efforts which are being made to make us more self-reliant, to reduce the import dependence of crude, for example, which is today 85%, is the effort which goes hand in hand to create the building blocks for petrochemicals. If we see the Honorable Prime Minister's vision, wherein there is a trust and there is a resolve to make ourselves completely independent and self-reliant by the year 2047, we need to move in several directions. The economy is moving rapidly to a gas-based bridge fuel economy, electrical mobility, ethanol blending plan, CGDs, CBG. These are all interventions towards making ourselves more sustainable. Therefore, it is nothing less of importance that we give immense thrust to the petrochemical and chemical industry. Let me put some numbers in perspective to put across the need for this growth. Because this gives us the baseline, this gives us the understanding as to where we need to go from today. If we see the demand of petrochemicals in the year 25, we are talking from a current demand of about 27 million to 41 million tons per annum. We are looking in the year, that is 25, we are looking in the year 2030 to going somewhere like 55 million tons and 2040 about 87 million tons. This is important that it sets the context on where the investments will go. As we are all aware, the petrochemical industry is deeply integrated with the refinery sector. And if we see the investments which are being made in the refinery sector today, the current projects which are ongoing have very high petrochemical intensity. On an average, the intensity of the Indian industry is about 7.5%. But some of the investments which are being made now have a petrochemical intensity of something like 26%. And globally, there are technologies and configurations which take this intensity to more than 50%. And that is where the configurations, the technology, the development of these integration has to happen such that the investments actually take us forward. And when I mentioned the other interventions of CBG, of ethanol blending, and the thrust on EV, there is a shift in the growth of sustainable fuel, sustainable mobility in terms of fossil-based ethanol, gasoline and diesel towards greening them, and therefore there is a room for converting a lot of crude-based feedstock to petrochemicals. This is essential to understand wherein we can pick these streams on to conversion. It is also bringing some kind of a security in the feed, which was talked about, which is very much essential to the investments we made in the petrochemical sector. In comparison to the refinery sector, the petrochemical sector is extremely energy intensive and extremely technology intensive as well. The energy is a crucial part if derived from fossil fuel. Again, it is an element of sustainability, an element of the industry looking at net zero in the future. So while selecting technology, we are looking at what kind of innovations, what kind of commercial technologies are put in place. The evaluation of these technologies, the evaluation of these investments must also bring in an element of sustainability. And why I say this is because at the time of decision making of boards, at the time of decision making with consultants, with configurations, these are aspects which were not looked at prior to a few years ago. The second aspect in terms of feedstock security is sourcing feedstock other than crude based. Crude sourcing is deeper, the market is deeper, and it is much better negotiated by the refiners. But we look at the ethane or the propanes or the other feedstocks, even low aromatic naphthas, these are not as deep. And therein lies the ability of corporates to make deals which are favoring in terms of price as well as availability. The flexibility of deals, whether these are short-term, long-term, or the ability to do spot purchase, which is very limited for these feedstocks, needs to be factored in as we go forward. Aspects which include the availability of infrastructure, availability of an assured supply of a lot of utilities, roads, etc., which are enablers. The second aspect, of course, is the fiscal incentives, whether it is for operating plants, these are PLI schemes, or which are interventions in terms of subvention of sorts or subsidy of sorts or VGF, which supports the industry in the beginning stages so that they can take off to become competitive. So factoring in all these needs to have, to our mind, a medium term and a long term plan. This industry has a cycle time of not less than 4 to 5 years to come on stream. So a very focused approach is required with all the stakeholders, and as we stand today, in terms of the support which the Government of India has, the Ministry has given, looking at enabling by way of a PCPI policy, looking at enabling with the ease of doing business, looking at feedstock securities, deals which help the corporates, also look at the operating companies in terms of support with PLI scheme. I think if the decision-making process is aware of all these enablers, today when we identify the supply-demand, we know the gaps where there exist, there are technologies available, there are interventions available in terms of doing configuration studies, in terms of engineering. This is all Atmanirbhar, we can do it all in India. And I would like to share that for our client BPCL, EIL has executed the first and only acrylate plant in BPCL Kochi with very difficult technologies which we have brought by indigenization of engineering. And the company is there to support any such studies, engineering and implementation aspects. And if we work together, putting all this, knitting it nicely in terms of the plans which are well thought out, well structured, we definitely see as we move forward a lot of competitiveness in terms of building this industry. Thank you very much.
Respected dignitaries on the stage and my dear colleagues in the chemicals industry. It's an honor and privilege to talk to all of you today in this August forum. In today's session, we'll talk about our report we just released on Mission Net Zero, a roadmap for the Indian chemical industry. Just talking about the major findings, again it's a long report, getting into a lot of detail. I'll touch the highlights in our session today. A lot of us in this room have a lot of reasons to be happy today. Over the last 5 years, the chemicals industry has been an absolute growth engine for the Indian economy. It is one of those sectors where the Atmanirbharta as well as Make in India story is really coming to fruition. It is a nationwide aspiration across sectors, but it is in chemicals probably we are the most ahead on both the fronts. The last 5 years, I like to joke with a lot of our clients, the chemicals industry has been the Silicon Valley of India, just in terms of growth, in terms of capacity being created, and most importantly, in terms of the valuation that a lot of you are enjoying in the markets. And this is unprecedented for us in the industry in India. The numbers do not tell the entire story. When you look at the numbers, we say 6 to 7% growth, and it will grow to close to $400 billion at the end of the year. But these numbers don't cover the true transformation that is happening. For a long time, whenever we were working with a lot of our global clients, there was always a belief that the Indian chemical industry was subscale, right? I think people used to say that, we had not many companies that crossed the $1 billion mark, and in a lot of chemical sectors, global scale usually aligned with the $1 billion mark. But this decade, our estimate, I think in Carney we've been working through this, we reasonably confidently estimate that about 30 companies in India will cross the $1 billion mark. And that will mean a very different kind of maturity for our sectors. We will be possibly the third largest sector in chemicals globally. And most importantly, the space between the third and the fourth would be very, very wide. I think the space that we're enjoying right now, particularly in specialty chemicals and agrochemicals, there is China, which is obviously very large, India is emerging at about, and the third space after that, there is a very wide gap. Southeast Asia, Middle East, Latin America, they are not yet there in the map. We reasonably estimate that there might be a 15 to 20 year horizon where India has an unimpeded space to grow and emerge globally competitive. And that is the opportunity that we are sitting in front. And that is reflecting in what a lot of my fellow colleagues spoke about earlier. Every part of the Indian chemicals industry is growing. The petrochemicals industry, we might hopefully see the new crackers coming up all over India. We're working on some of them. The agrochemicals industry, both in the B2C led by penetration, but also more importantly, the contract manufacturing play serving global markets is growing at 50% by some estimates. Specialty chemicals is seeing a wave of innovation and growth that's never been seen before. The inorganic chemicals industry is putting up capacities like never before. Capex-led growth is the theme of the year and the theme of the decade for the Indian chemicals industry, and that is going to mean transformative change for all of us in this room. But even as we grow, as we scale, as we mature, the responsibility on us is becoming higher and higher. As we become a global leader in the sector, the sustainability concerns are going to raise further and further. Not a lot of us appreciate this today. India is poised to be one of the most climate impacted countries in the world. The number of people who will be exposed to adverse impacts of climate change is likely to be highest in India more than any other nation. Some estimates, I think we did some work last year, about 500 million people might be impacted by adverse impact of climate change in the coming decade. Right now, genuinely so, we believe that climate change is a West-led impact. We've not contributed to emissions historically, but the unfortunate reality is we are going to pay the price one way or the other. And that will mean that as an industry, as a country, we will need to be proactive in managing the impact of climate change and reducing our own contributions. Within the industrial emissions that we speak about, chemicals contributes to about 16 to 18% of heavy industry emissions globally, and that is what we classify as hard to abate emissions. Unlike most other sectors, in chemicals, the carbon atom is our life and soul. The carbon atom is fuel, it is feedstock, it is in the product, and it is the end-of-life emissions. Carbon is ubiquitous in our industry, and decarbonizing our sector will be the challenge of our lifetimes. And it is, the stakes can't be any lower. This is literally about saving the planet. And one way or the other, either led by governmental push or by customer push from our export clients or by our own initiative, we will need to crack the decarbonization puzzle. Roughly speaking, India, one of the advantages we have is our petrochemical sector is not as large given some of the historical disadvantages on feedstock and power. So our scope 3 emissions tend to be a bit lower, but scope 1 and scope 2 continue to be relatively high. So there is a reasonable emission footprint that we need to manage. What we have identified in our report, the core of our report, is 7 levers which we think will be critical to help decarbonize the sector. These levers apply in some combination across all the aspects of the chemical sector. I'll talk through the 7 levers briefly. The first is enhancing efficiency. The best thing that we can do to reduce emission right now, which is cash positive, is to run our plants more efficiently. I think we've been working on a number of plants in India. There is still scope for improving yield, reducing energy consumption, reducing steam consumption, and to reduce emissions throughout. Improving efficiencies in our plants is probably the most cash efficient way of reducing emissions. I think there is a lot to be done there. Second, electrification. My challenge to everybody in this room is, no matter what level of renewable energy you think you're using, there is probably a business case to think more. We've been working on probably a couple of gigawatts of renewable installation in India. Prices are crashing, new mechanisms are emerging. Most parts of the Indian chemical sector, up to a 70% adoption of renewables should be possible. It will need creativity, it will need a push from the leadership, but it is absolutely feasible, and that is a major step in decarbonizing our footprint. Third, biomass. I think a lot of you have been ahead in adopting biomass. The government is also committed to making biomass available for boilers and for steam, and I think that's likely to continue gaining traction in the coming decade. Hydrogen, I think we are very bullish about hydrogen. India has always had a problem with feedstock and fuel. Hydrogen for the first time makes us self-sufficient. From depending on fossil fuel, hopefully we can depend on seawater. Our estimates are that India will possibly be the second lowest cost of producing hydrogen globally. The Middle East will be cheaper than us, but that apart, we might emerge as the second lowest cost of hydrogen production in the world, and hydrogen could emerge as a big source of both fuel and feedstock for us in the economy. I'll talk about that briefly in the subsequent slide as well. Carbon capture is probably a bit far out. I think most economical calculations, I think till 2030 it doesn't emerge viable. There are going to be some early use cases. I think capturing carbon and using methanol, making methanol will be viable, but this might be, in our view, a wave 3, wave 4 kind of adoption as you go through your decarbonization journey. Bio-based feedstock is an interesting R&D problem for us to solve. Everything from carbon to ethanol to other bio-based feedstock. Europe is slightly ahead. Can we replace fossil-based feedstock with biology-based feedstock? Is a really interesting problem to solve, but right now not commercially viable. Our expectation is that as carbon prices go up, probably in the next 10 to 15 years, we will see bio-based feedstock emerge as more and more competitive. Right now, in India, apart from some ethanol-based applications, not a whole lot that we can do, but interesting to keep in mind as we see the industry changing in the future.
Particularly in the chemical sector, which he has highlighted in his executive summary. In fact, that will, if we start taking steps from now onwards, probably we will be able to change the perspective of the industry also, particularly the image of the industry, which is there, as I mentioned by earlier speaker, until and unless we take steps to ensure that we care about sustainability and we are taking necessary actions, people will not really engage with us in the long run. Friends, chemicals and petrochemical industry has grown dramatically in the past few decades, and there are expectations that growth would continue in the future as well. The estimates are good. Our growth rate in the chemical sector and particularly in some sub-segments is much more than the GDP growth rate, and as been estimated, this is a high time for the industry to realize its far-reaching potential in India. Putting my utmost faith in the industry, I urge all present here to have ambitious growth targets and vision. Talking on behalf of the Department of Chemicals and Petrochemicals, I assure you that we are here to support the industry in identifying and building a strategic ecosystem for achieving its development vision. We also must take full advantage of the present global market shifts in establishing the excellency and prominence of India at the global level, as we are not only capable to meeting the domestic market demand, but also the global market. Friends, understanding the potential that our industry holds, I believe that 2047 will witness a highly evolved and developed industry, which is beyond our imagination and ambitions. Most of you present here are aware about the vision exercise undertaken by the department. I must say it was extremely encouraging to see overarching goals and targets that you have set for yourself to achieve and celebrate the vision of India for 2047. Friends, based on today's deliberations, I would like CII to organize closed-door roundtables in collaboration with this department on key milestones and segments developing from the discussion, further to which prepare a competitive compilation of the strategic action plan with achievable timeline. I must once again congratulate CII for their unstinted efforts to bring to the fore the key role chemistry plays, particularly in driving economic growth. This conference has helped to bring together various stakeholders to build a thriving chemical sector in the country. Our booming chemical sector can place India amongst the front runners in the global market and contribute to the achievement of national vision of when independent India turns 100. I wish CII and industry the very best in their endeavors to create a thriving and gradual growth trajectory. Friends, I once again wish you all the best. Jai Hind.
As we come to the end of this inaugural session, once again I thank Sri Arun Barokaji for addressing the industry at the Indian Chemical and Petrochemical Conference. I believe that India has the potential to become a global hub of chemical, and also believe that this is an opportune time to take some key policy decisions. A committed government leadership, a progressive domestic industry, supportive environment for growth is crucial for India to be globally competitive. CII will continue to work with the government in all its endeavors to create a conducive policy environment for the industry. May I thank our partners today who have helped us in putting together this conference. I am sure that we will find these deliberations useful during the course of the day. Please enjoy the discussion and continue to participate and support CII's initiative. So that brings us to the end of this session. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
047. I can give you some sort of a nudging hint whether Europe will be able to hold that position. I mean, I think one has to really look into that part. You don't see in the top anybody coming from, the Saudi Arabia or the people who supply really the basic stuff. They are not into the downstream kind of chemistry part. So you also see them absent here. So therefore, I do believe, from a very broader point of view, there will be some reposition in this landscape which is given there. So next slide. Yeah. Now, coming basically on the vision, we do believe that our economy will really double or triple by 2047. So I think the consequence on this sector has that we will be competitive. We need to be close to 1 trillion. I mean, both the things have to happen. One thing in isolation will not happen. So therefore, I think that direction to set for 1 trillion is pretty clear. You see, a lot of other changes will happen that will add to the, you can call it demography, or you can call it to the ecosystem in the country, will become even more favorable, because when we talk about biomass to be downstream, and biomass, you are aware that we have 150 million hectare of cultivation which is done, and out of that availability of biomass is quite normal there, which will feed to the downstream chemistry part, and those technologies are already ready. It was thought that the ethanol part is already there, and ethanol to be downstream chemistry, there are multiple ways to do that, and so those things at the right cost will also emerge as a part of the technology. The exports if it is 1 trillion, 40% need to be the part of the export. So therefore, we could be much more optimistic. And I do believe that the specialty chemical need to be recognized as an industry. So what does it mean, the difference today and tomorrow, when this recognition has to come in our country that the specialty chemicals is an industry, where how it evolves, lower cost, that is not the way to create the industry. I think this will become the industry when we are creating a sustainable model both for the production and also for our footprint outside. So therefore, there is one way to just sell it like a trader. Another thing is that to make the sustainable business proposition, and that is where the specialty chemicals could hold a big possibility. So, and we know that a lot of new things will be added in terms of the completely new products, the sunrise products will happen. That will be added to the new segments, to the specialty chemicals, whether it is 5G technology or whether it is the battery technology, etc. We know that the fluoropolymers have a big scope to come into this stream. So I think a lot of new product categories would also be getting added, and therefore we could be very, very optimistic about it. And we hold either a very decent market share already, which is in the double digits, so it could further grow. And we have also seen all these segments which I have listed, the annual growth today is more than 15%. And it could go from 15% to almost 25-26% for the flavors and fragrance, etc. And in agrochemical, where the industry basically I come from, it is close to 18 to 19%. So I think we are talking about quite a vigorous growth, and this is bringing both from the export point of view and from the domestic point of view, because we have a huge captive market as such. The R&D part needs to I think there is a talent, and I think we have to look at more from the holistic point of view, that the skill development is one part, the talent development is completely different, and it is not really sufficient to have just the talent and the skills. I think we need to have really the bandwidth which looks at the holistic part of the business, that the growth is with the safety, growth is with the sustainability, and safety, sustainability need to also focus to bring more and more technology which is servicing the safety and the sustainability.
Outset, I must thank CII for this Indian Chemical and Petrochemical Conference, and very aptly chosen subject for today's discussion, India 2047, milestones for building competitiveness. As we know that we are now, India is at the point of a very good promising trajectory of growth, and the growth potential that we have in the chemical and petrochemical sector is very huge, and many studies say that the growth is going about 9% and 9% plus, and it is a very conservative figure, and in many sectors the growth is still higher. And many say that the by 2047 we may touch the figure of 2 trillion in the chemical and petrochemical sector. Mr. Kaushik had mentioned about 1 trillion, but some studies say that we will touch about 1960 if we grow at 9.2%. And by 2040 we will be having about 1 trillion. So this is the potential that we have. So keeping that in view, as Madam Navneet told, that government is working on synergy, and lot of policy decisions have been taken and are being taken to meet the growth of that potential. And I would like to point out few in all sectors, like on regulatory and quality standards, governance, on labor policies, industrial infrastructure, then on local manufacturing, exports and innovation, availability of feedstock. In all areas there are schemes going on. And also Honorable Prime Minister has mentioned in his $15 speech that by 2047 we have to be the developed nation. So in that respect, the work has to be done both jointly from government side and from the industry side. How we can convert that, reach that dream of being the developed nation, and it is very much achievable. It's not that because our country is now considered as a very promising destination for investment, and many things, many growth, many drivers are there, which is indicating that this is a goal very easily achievable. And as you know, sir, in our this chemical and petrochemical sector, we have a lot of growth drivers, and two important things that the per capita consumption of our chemical and petrochemical is very low, and that gives a big headroom for growth, and we have a very competitive and technical and skill level that is available with us. And recently the government is also working very strongly on one more area, that is PM Gati Shakti, and a lot of conclaves, lot of meetings are happening, and this PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan will also help us in achieving many infrastructure projects that is happening and is going to happen, because while we do some infrastructure projects, there are constraints like disjointed planning, then non-utilization of installed capacity, lack of standardizations, and lack of coordination, clearances, etc. So this will certainly help us in making the growth on a faster track. So since the growth potential is there, then and what we can do to expedite it, like can you do something on things like import substitution? Can you do something on, because our chemical and petrochemical sector, we are having a net import of about 1.75 lakh crore. So there is a lot of potential on import substitution. How we can do that? Can we got some disadvantage factor, reduce the cost of disadvantage factor? How things can, how can we bring out some scheme so that industry facilitation can be done, or industry can chip in to reduce those cost disadvantages, and we have the import substitutions. But for the sake of expediting growth, expediting the any resolving the bottleneck of the industry, that facilitation cell facility can be available. So what we can do on import substitution, what we can do on improving the growth of specialty chemical, because specialty chemical is an area where it may have a major share, it is growing very fast, and it will have a major share of our chemical petrochemical market. So can we do something on specialty chemicals? Can we do something on sustainability? Of course, we have identified some things like import substitution, specialty chemicals, sustainability chemistry in our department, and we are doing how we can improve that. We are planning to have a intensive also on that, and many such areas can be also identified, like R&D, like this circular economy. Then how we can change our industry's efficiency, like how to change from the second generation to third generation industry, machinery and plant. All those areas can be thought of, and idea can be, brainstorming can be done, and schemes can be made to further expedite. Because we have got this trend, as Mr. Viswanathan has mentioned in the initial while setting the tone, that in the last 4 or 5 years, India has established its position of strength, position of competence in the manufacturing sector. We are the second largest steel producer, third largest producer of pharmaceuticals, third largest exporter of textiles, fourth largest in Asia for chemical sales, fourth largest producer of cars. So we have already established our strength. So that can be further we can improve our strength. While we are second, we are third, we can become the number one. And this is possible. This is not at all difficult. So these are the issues. What basically we can do.
Learning from the last years. The theme for this session is competitive. The theme I will talk about is capability. I'm very, very delighted that not one of my panelists used the buzzword of China plus one or Europe plus one. I think India's story on chemicals is not going to be China plus one or Europe plus one. We are going to build our own story, and the foundation of that story will be capability. What I mean by that is, we work with a number of global investors and with Indian companies. The molecules that are coming to India are not the molecules that are going to China, or the ones that are manufactured in Europe. The ones that are coming to India are complex molecules, 6-step, 7-step molecules. Building and differentiating that capability is really going to be a core theme for us over the next 25 years. And therein lies the challenge as well. We know that we are a capability-led industry, but I'm sure if I ask any of you in this room, do we have enough chemical engineers? Not really. Do we have enough project engineers? Not really. We are sitting on the demographic dividend of the century. We are going to have the youngest population, but not enough of that talent is getting filtered into the chemical industry in the volume that we need. So while capability will be the theme, I think looking forward, we will need to nurture and build the pipeline for that capability. The second theme that I would highlight, I think Mr. Raman highlighted on that, is going to be innovation. We are not going to be building applications in the same sectors that areas where the future is going to evolve. This sector needs to go beyond just duty-based advantage. I think that's going to be critical, but it also got to go into innovation, where we are inventing the future. And I think that's going to be a second thing that is I'm taking away. The future of Indian chemicals industry has to be about new developments, new innovations, and leading the world. The third theme I would take away is about translating a liability into a weakness. I think traditionally a liability for us has been the absence of feedstock. I think going forward that might be our strength. A country without feedstock possibly can be the most sustainable chemicals industry in the world. I think we can translate that weakness into leadership in green chemicals, in bio-based chemicals, and hopefully emerge as the most sustainable chemicals industry in the world. I think all our other peer nations have a heavy fossil fuel-based industry, which leads to huge scope 3, scope 1, 2 emissions. We will not be burdened with that liability. We are building our sector today, and when we are building the sector today, we can choose to be a greener sector from the beginning. Come together. But going forward, that has to be tighter and tighter. I think policy and business development have to go together. I think that's where we gain our right share in the global markets. With the free trade agreements coming up and with the policy framework getting in place, the foundations are getting set in, but there is clearly a lot more that can be done in terms of how the government